Welcome to Graduate Space Radio. I'm here with my friend Peter Williams. How you doing, Peter?
Doing well, thanks, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's great to see you again. I feel like I haven't got my Peter fix in like 6 to 8 weeks. It's kind of crazy. You don't realize like how much you enjoy the drug until you stop getting it.
Yeah, I know. It's good that we're kickstarting this again. I think we were doing it pretty regularly in the lead up to the end of the year, and then we took a bit of a break. And so, yeah, this is good just to restart the process with Andrea here, who is based in Seattle. The engineer's whisperer is what she refers to herself, or maybe her colleagues have called her that, or the people that she coaches. We'll hear more about that as we go forward. And how we met. You know, the usual format for this conversation is completely unplanned. It's more about, you know, how do we think about things? What is Gratitude Space Radio? What is Productive Accidents? How did we sort of come together and start collaborating? So maybe I'll just start with that for people who haven't heard the story of Productive Accidents and sort of a little bit about my background. Then we can sort of take turns introducing ourselves and then we can roll from there. So bit of background. So my name's Peter Williams. I grew up in a small town in Australia called Armidale. It's in New South Wales. It's got about 25,000 people. Great place to grow up. Great place if you're passionate about sport, and fairly cold sort of place. It actually snows there once or twice a year, which is unusual for Australia, but not enough to do anything with. You can't snowboard on it or ski or anything like that. But my big things growing up were BMX and skateboarding. And that's pretty much what I did for at least 10,000 hours, 20,000 hours, whatever it is. And that gave me, I guess, a good insight into creativity, because these sports were kind of being invented and evolving every month. You'd get a new magazine and there'd be something new that didn't appear, didn't exist the month before. So that got me really interested in creativity and eventually how does innovation happen. And fast forward, we after getting married, ended up living overseas for a while in London and then back in Australia. Then with our first child, we went to Singapore, thinking it would be 2 years. 9 years later, with another 3 children, we moved to Hong Kong, and we've been here for 10 years. But while living in Singapore, we did some more study. We took the opportunity, both my wife and I did a few master's programs. The most recent one for me was an MBA at the University of Chicago, their Booth School of Business. They had a campus in Singapore at the time, which has now subsequently moved to Hong Kong. And out of that whole program, the big idea that I got was around this idea of productive accidents, which is a framework for how does innovation happen. The short version is, the more open your network is, the more likely you're going to be to see or get introduced to interesting ideas. It could be people, business models, technology, all these different things. And the professor boiled all of his research down into a single phrase, which was put yourself at risk of productive accidents. So today's conversation is a great example of that. We've got, Chris in Kentucky, we've got Andrea in Seattle. How did we meet, and what has led from that is what we'll cover today, and just see some of the magic that's evolved. So that's enough context for my story. Chris, I'll explain how we met later on, but Andrea, how about you? Let's get your story, and then we can roll from there.
Yes, hi. Thanks for having me today. Start me with the question.
Well, how did you end up in the US, and how did you end up becoming a coach dedicated to bringing out the best in engineers?
Ooh, you're jumping right in, Peter. You know me. So I was born in Romania. I'm Hungarian, though. My whole family is Hungarian. I get this question many times. Well, did you move from Hungary to Romania, or what happened? What happened is that the borders changed on us. So my family never moved. They just redrew the borders. So that's I'm Hungarian. And how did I get to the US? Yes, I spent 1 year in Germany, and then when I returned, I was in college. I interrupted my studies. It was boring and corruption, so I went to Germany. Then when I returned, my best friend was in Arizona, and I thought she was joking when she said, "Andrea, I visited Christina in Germany, now come and visit me." And I love playing. So I replied back, sure, just find me a job and send me the paperwork, and I'll do my best to get a visa, and I'll join you right away. And what I didn't know back then, that she was working in HR. So for her to find me a job, in 2 weeks, I got this note, I have the job, here's the paperwork, this is what you have to do. Oh, and by the way, if you're actually gonna come, I want you to lead these 12 people as well who also want to come. So I got the visa, I got to the US, and that first day when I arrived to Lake Powell, border of Arizona and Utah, my husband met me. So that wasn't in my plans. We're together since, and we moved from Arizona to Washington State. Not in Seattle yet, in the middle of the state where he grew up. And then my schooling got me to Seattle. I finished at the University of Washington. That was my big dream, to get an education worth educating for, worth living for. And went through some great opportunities, corporate opportunities at Microsoft, the hedge fund, and at Boeing, and I was looking for my next, what do I do next? At the same time, and this ties into how I became a coach, at the same time, I was trying really hard to build my relationship with my mother, who, again, I told her I'm going to be in the US for 3 months, and I haven't returned since. So I never had the opportunity to build that relationship with my mom as an adult. So I tried really hard from the States, and when I went and visited, to do that. And I had great failures, and I had one great one where I failed amazingly and miserably. And there was one friend who had been along with me, who I called in those situations. And I called him this time as well. And he showed up. And with one question, he helped me to see my relationship with my mother from a different perspective. And with that one question, I changed my relationship with my mom. I changed my relationship with myself. I changed my whole life. And at that moment, and after that experience, I told myself that if somebody was there to do this with me and help me through this, I want to be that person for others. I don't know how it's going to look like or what it's called. I just remember this really strong feeling and determination of, this is what I want to do next.
So what was that question? You got me curious now.
Yeah, what was the question? Yeah, me too. I want to know.
Oh, the question was, so when we met, he heard me whining about what happened and about my mom. And then we went to the store and we bought a notepad and a pen. And then we sat down at the table and he said, okay, Andrea, draw a circle. I drew a circle. All right. Now in this circle, put all your feelings, what you feel towards your mom right now. Just put it in there. And I had a business background, so I made a little pretty chart and I thought, oh, this is gonna be cool. So I pushed it in front of him and he looked at it and he looked at it and he said, Andrea, I don't see love here. Don't you love your mom? And that was the bomb for me. In that moment, I realized that I was trying so hard to build a relationship that I actually never had. I never had a relationship with my mother. I never was interested to find out who she was as a person, as a woman. She was stuck in my brain, in my feelings as a mother before I went to Germany. And I think I was stuck in her mindset as well and heart as a teenager. So I never saw her, never knew her. So after that moment, I went home and I turned the page in the notebook. I just wrote Mom. And I started to just find out who she was, ask her questions about her past, her upbringing, her wishes, her dreams, her fears, all those things that we talk about with our friends, but we rarely dare to talk about with our parents. I went in that space. And in that space where I was looking to find her, I found myself.
You know what? I think we should jump across to Chris and hear his story, because, you know, just by productive accident, there is a direct parallel to you writing to your mum and what Chris did and how he started Gratitude Space Radio. So because I know that little side story and how I know Chris, let's jump across there and see how that evolved, because both stories, I think, are going to generate another conversation, which is pretty powerful. So we'll hear what happened next after we hear Chris's story.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Andrew. I want to tell you, I really loved what you shared. Wow, I was sitting there going, that's an amazing idea. I would love like a blog post. Maybe you could do, I don't know, maybe just the questions you haven't asked your parents to get to know them, you know, like nobody ever, I think it's a brilliant idea, right? Because I know my dad really well, but there's still some of those questions, right? Because we never think of like you said, you just don't think, you don't think of people, you don't think to ask them those questions just because you were born, you were born with them. Like it's, you know what I mean? Like they've known you all your life. So it's like, you missed that whole part where you would, because you were developing with them, like you missed the whole part where you would ask that, right? Because it's like they're already there. So love that. It made me think of, I love the questions to ask my father. So anyways, I'm babbling. So I'll continue. My experience with my mother is very different from Andrea's. And, but at the same time, it's, loving. I grew up with a very loving, present mom. And in my scenario, after 35 years, I decided on my birthday, December 30th, that I would write her a letter of gratitude, and I wanted to celebrate her on my birthday. And that thought process was basically, she has memory of this. This day only exists because of her. There are a lot of reasons that made me go, if we're going to celebrate someone's birthday, if we're going to celebrate this day, there's a lot of reasons why it should be about her and not about me. So I did what, I sat down and wrote her a letter explaining all that, and I put it on Facebook because I wanted it to be public. I wanted people to read it, and it it did something, brought us closer when we were as close as I thought we could ever be. My mother is somebody that I had no problem kissing on the cheek in public and telling her I love her. So there was no estrangeness. But when I heard from my father that day that she needs time before she can talk with you, it completely stopped me in my tracks. And it still, when I share this, it's still really, it's almost a mesmerizing type of thing, because it's there's magic that happens. It's a magical thing, basically, because it's anything I could have dreamed of happening, right? Like it's not something I could have created. If I were going to sit down and like design this moment, like I couldn't, it isn't be possible, but it happened, right? It happened, and it was an amazing thing. And I didn't know at the time that, her cancer was going to come back, and that 4 months the day later that she'd be, she'd die in hospice care. And it really stopped me in my tracks. But there's a lot more of that story, but I would love to right now do what we have here is like a gratitude checklist. I'd like to do a couple of these. So simply, Andrea, the thing is, we're just going to say 3 things we're grateful for, just one word things. It can be random. It can be whatever you want it to be. I'm going to start off random, and you guys are welcome to get totally focused. But I'm just going to say, I love technology, and that it allows people. See, I didn't even stick to my rule. Okay, I love technology. I'm automatically wanting to expand, right? Carrots and postcards. That's my 3 things. So, Peter, you're up. What are 3 things you're grateful for in this moment?
Wow. BMX, skateboarding, family.
Awesome. Okay, Andrea, your turn.
My turn. Friends, art, and music.
Awesome. I want to do one more real quick random one. I was doing a live stream with a couple the other day, and they talked about how gratitude, it's great to say you have a friend, but when's the last time you thought to give gratitude to the person that connected you? And I love that, because like gratitude has so many layers. So for example, I'm sitting here with Peter, and I'm just going to give a shout out to our friend Chris Shimbra, who introduced us. So I'm grateful for Chris Shimbra introducing me to Peter and allowing that magic to happen. So Andrea, we're speaking to Peter here. So I guess, cause we're all in a circle, who introduced you to Peter? How did that happen?
Peter introduced me to Peter. So the shout out is to Peter. He sent me a request on LinkedIn, and I just did my little spiel that I send out to people. Hi, nice to meet you. I am interested and curious of what inspired me to connect with me. And Peter was grateful enough to respond. And I said, cool, let's have a virtual talk. And I think he said, cool, what about now? And I thought, this is my guy. We don't need to schedule things here. We could just do it right now. It feels like, again, I grew up where, we didn't have telephones and mobile phones. So it was the right now. And you knock on somebody's door. Hey, are you home? So we had one conversation, and it was really different than any other conversation that I would have with LinkedIn contacts. And there was something there that really drew me, and I wanted to know more. So that was for me.
That's awesome. So Peter, you want to speak to the other end now? We've basically said how we met you, but
yeah, I mean, this is all happening within 2020, right? And you think that it was a terrible experience, and it's still continuing, but in a lot of ways, these connections and collaborations accelerated because of, going back to Chris's favorite thing, technology, and people being creative in the way that they pivoted, I guess, their business models. So I was doing Seth Godin's creatives workshop around, I think I started around this time last year, and it was a great program for me because it created like the discipline of 100-day streak of whatever you're trying to do, whether you're a musician or a poet or a writer, try to do whatever you're doing for 100 days straight. And that enabled me to focus on writing the book, which is Productive Accidents. That's where that's come from. And during that, someone in that Seth Godin workshop mentioned Chris Schembra has a thing called gratitude and pasta. And a backstory is I have an interest in gratitude because I chose to give myself the challenge of writing 10,000 thank yous about 7 or 8 years ago. And if you do one a day, which I haven't, it's going to take you 27 years. So it's a long-term, experiment in a lot of ways in writing and being aware and mindful of good things that are happening in any given situation. And so I was curious to learn more about gratitude and pasta. And I reached out to him, I think it was via Facebook or something. He said, hey, we're doing a dinner. Normally it's a physical dinner in New York, but because of COVID, they had, switched to virtual. And so, 7:47 p.m. New York is 7:47 a.m. Hong Kong at that time of year. You have dinner, I'll have breakfast. And I went through that experience, met some great people, turned into collaborations. And then he wrote to me, I think a month later, and said, would you like to come to one of these dinners again? Here are 3 dates that are available. Pick one that works. And I went back and said, well, how about I go to all 3 of them and I'll bring a friend each time. And so, I had someone, a Texan in Taipei, another Chris Davis, who I invited to the first one. He loved it so much that the following week he decided to invite the people who joined the call on a virtual tour of his neighborhood in Taipei. And I thought, okay, well, let's make that a little tradition. How about I take people the following week of a little guided tour of Hong Kong? And during that, Chris Schembra joined, and he said, oh, you should meet Chris Palmer. You guys are both into gratitude. And I think he just sent a 1-word email, talk or something like that. And that was enough to get us both curious. And then we started talking and collaborating, and it's just snowballed from there. And we'll learn more about what Chris has been doing with Gratitude Space, turning it into podcast series, writing contributions for 2 books that he's prepared, and this magic keeps on happening. So LinkedIn has become this playground as well, and it's very easy to work out who are the people that you want to get to know. It's something they write, or a comment, or an attitude, or just an overall mindset, I think. And the people that reach out and say, hey, seems like we've got some shared interest, do you want to have a chat? I'm always going to say yes to that because, 8 times out of 10, it turns into this really interesting conversation. It becomes this lifelong friendship really quickly. And that's what happened with Andrea, because you could tell, she's a curious person. She asks great questions. She connects people. Like, even for her birthday recently, she decided to host this random Zoom call with all her coaching buddies. And I jumped on that, and I met some really cool people. I saw a guy with surfboards in the background. I wanted to get to know him. He's a former Olympic coach and interesting guy. Other people, one guy, I think I'd listened, he had died and come back to life, and that's changed his perspective on a whole bunch of things. And anyway, there was someone that helped people with their sleep. And, just the variety is what I really love about this whole concept of just, random connections are often the best because you have no expectations. But if you go in with an open mind, you keep talking until you find something you both care about, and then you collaborate, and that's kind of my formula for productive accidents and adventure in a lot of ways. So anyway, that was a pretty long-winded way of describing the overall methodology, but yeah, let's go with Andrea. What do you think about all of these different ideas, and tell us some more about you.
Ooh, what do I think? Well, I'm going to go back to Chris about the letter. My mom was here 2 years ago, so 19, not 2019. And I knew that that's going to be the last of her visit over the pound, over the ocean. She's getting older and the trip is just becoming more difficult for her. So I had this intention of, I'm going to really get to know her now because I'm present with her face to face. And I did, and it went well. And at the end, I wrote her a letter too. So I wrote her a letter of forgiveness, of acceptance. There was one more. I think I started with regrets, forgiveness, and acceptance. And I remember I was like, I want to give it to her. No, I wanted to read to her. And I changed that to, I'm just going to give it to her. It just didn't feel right. I wanted to give it to her, and then she'll read it when she will read it. So I wanted to say, where I'm going is, it really touched me what you said about the letter, Chris, because I think through that letter and her reading it, after that, for the first time, our next conversation, she told me that she believes in me and in what I do. And I think that she accepts now that I have chosen that place. This is the place where I'm going to be. And then she understands that I will be okay. So letters and the power of letters. Peter, I mean, well, your story, and when we talk, it's, I don't know, time just flies. Those two people that you mentioned are, as you were speaking, like how I even met them, so such an example of productive accidents. Andrew, the guy with the surfboard, I didn't even want to meet for a while because of his picture on LinkedIn, and I told him this later. Then Peter, how I got to Paul, the guy who died and came back. It was through another friend who, then another friend who somehow introduced me to to him. And first conversation, I thought that we had a conversation, but it was an interview for a company that he was working for. So that was another one. What? Okay. Where am I going? I think I'm staying in this space of just meeting the two of you and being right now here. It's such a grateful moment.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it is a grateful moment. I wanted to I appreciate you sharing the people that I love that Peter, you remembered the people. I wanted to step back for 1 second and say, even though Peter reached out to you on LinkedIn, if we wanted to go a step further in that gratitude process, we would just say LinkedIn. I'm grateful for LinkedIn. You know what I mean? You can go further. Who got you on LinkedIn, right? Like, I'm not asking you to answer that question. I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like, who's the introduction? Actually, LinkedIn was the introduction, but Peter used the tool, right? But it was LinkedIn. If LinkedIn didn't exist, you wouldn't have met Peter, vice versa. You know what I mean? Like these modern day things like LinkedIn are massive things to be grateful for, and massive in that how do we connect to individuals who change our lives, you know?
Well, I'm going to go further then, Chris. I'm going
Please.
to thank engineers, because without engineers, somebody who created that space that it's called LinkedIn right now, we wouldn't be talking right now. And
that's true.
So let's talk more about engineers. Are you an engineer, or are you just, you love engineers for different reasons?
I am not an engineer. No, I'm not an engineer or trained engineer. But that's exactly why I love them, just for that reason that we talk about LinkedIn. Engineers, we talk about your light, when you turn on the light when you get up. An engineer, turn on the faucet. An engineer, flush your toilet, take a shower, open your fridge, make your coffee, cook on your stove, get in your car, drive on the road. I mean, I can go on and on. There are so many kinds of engineers, and few of them, lots of them. Without them, we wouldn't be where we are right now. And that is part of my mission, and why I work with engineers. It's because I am so grateful and thankful for what they do. And I want them to do and be the best, not just do good, but really be the best in what they do, because then everybody else will benefit. We all gonna live a better life.
And how did that, where did you get this idea to focus on engineers? Was that organic, or you always thought that was going to be the focus area?
It was given. It was totally given to me. I was part of an accountability team, and then I found my own accountability buddy, and we were going through this exercise. Another coach of, okay, well, who do we want to coach, and so forth. And she asked me these simple questions. Well, who are you coaching right now? Engineers. And do you like coaching them? Yes. And how did you end up coaching them? I didn't. They chose me. So she just asked me these questions, and it was just so obvious, like water to a fish. Like, yeah, I like working with engineers. And it's funny because I was working in HR, and I thought that my HR friend's going to be all over coaching, this transformation and better life and career, but they weren't. They're very risk averse. But all the engineers that I asked, they're like, oh yeah, can actually I do that? I asked them for a referral, and they're all, is it bad that I want to work with you? Is that okay? And I said, no, that's okay. And when I went back and I asked them why, and they said, well, I don't know anything about coaching and what you do with that, but I know you. I know your perspective and how you're thinking, and there's always fun, and whatever you're doing, that's always the next step ahead of everybody else and the next cool thing. So I want to be involved. I want to be part of it. I want to learn about it. And that's how I got engineers around me to rally.
And how long ago was this?
Almost 5 years ago.
Yeah. And what are some of the success stories or your favorite stories that have happened, in these interactions? Or subsequently, like how did you help unlock the engineer's magic?
Good question. Which one to pull out? Okay, I'll just go with whatever pops into my head. I'll go with this one engineer, executive right now, who came to me and said, Andrea, I don't know if I want to stay with the company. I just don't know if I'm relating to the company anymore. I've been here from the very beginning. I built it up. And now there's just something that's missing. Maybe I'm ready for the next career move. And everybody else around me is telling me it's ready. I should be leaving and find something else. And we go through, and it was really just asking him the main question of, well, what are his values, and how is the company that he grew up with reflecting his values? And he was very disconnected from the original values when he joined the company and what he was feeling right now, and kind of checked in with what was important for him and in this stage of his life and family. And the interesting thing, what happened is that he dropped the whole idea of looking for a new job and exploring somewhere else. And he said, no, I found my values, and I think they still exist in this company. And I am going to become the leader, the next leader in the company, who will be leading the company in the vision and the mission. So he kind of, that's not what he expected. That's not why we started working together. But that's why I love working with engineers, because once they find their awareness of who they are, what they want, what they're capable of, they just take it to the next level from there. So he went back.
What's funny is, I don't know that many engineers, but now that I'm alert to this, right, you've sort of primed my brain. Whenever I come across an engineer and they seem like, someone that would benefit from one of your conversations, I've just been introducing them. And I'm curious to see how some of those turn out as well. And even one of my brother-in-laws, Damien, is an engineer. I don't know a huge amount about what he does. I know it's got to do with water safety and making sure that that's available in Sydney and other places. Even though he's from Scotland, it'd be cool just to arrange a conversation there too and see what happens. Because so in my background, it's more finance and my wife and I. But that's what I like, just to, now you've opened up my eyes to the whole concept of, how big a role engineers play in our lives. And it sort of reminds me of that book, Chris, that you spoke about, the guy who studied how his coffee was made or whatever.
A.J. Jacobs, Thanks 1,000.
Yeah, and maybe describe that book. I think that's kind of interesting. It takes Andrea's comment about engineers to another level.
For sure. So A.J. Jacobs is an amazing author. He actually was very kind to even give me a blurb for my book, which allowed me to have A.J. Jacobs, New York Times bestseller. Granted, it's not Chris on the cover of the book, so it's not Chris Palmer, which I thought was. Anyways, so he really drove home the idea of taking one thing. I call it gratitude cubes. It's where you can take one thing you're grateful for, and then you can literally find out you have hundreds of things that you're actually grateful for. It's like almost like the tip of the iceberg. So his tip of the iceberg, as it may, was coffee. And he was very specific. He said, I'm going to think 1,000 people that are part of the cup of coffee I get in New York down the street at the local coffee place. I don't remember the name of the place. So I'm going to think 1,000 people. And this was his 4th or 5th book. And he does like journey books. So he spends like a year doing things. One of his ones before that was a year living biblically. That's where he grew his beard out and anyways, he goes full, you know what I mean? Like he's a journey writer, you know what I mean? Like he gets in it. And he spent, so the book is just a great book. It's not a long, it's like 150, 200 pages. He just goes in and explains his thought process and thinking over 1,000 people. Now, granted, you don't hear all 1,000 stories, but if it's, obviously he started at the coffee place, so he thanked the barista, he thanked the owner sent him over to where they get the beans, so the big stockyard where the beans are, then even going to Colombia where that place gets the own beans, and thanking the actual people on the ground, or thanking the people that make the cups and the person that designed the lid, and like the artistry goes in that, so far to go like the water, right? The New York City water, going and seeing the people, like as far as picking up the trash along the waterways, like there's, just like you said, Andrea, when you start to go down the rabbit hole of gratitude for things we're sitting in front of, there's like so much. And I love it so much because, when I was writing my book, Dear Gratitude, I was talking about these levels, and my editor said, it's not that these things are things that you're grateful for because of this. These things are specifically different things that you're grateful for. It's not like I'm grateful for coffee, and then there's like, okay, because of this, this, and this, it's like, I'm grateful for coffee, but no, I'm grateful for coffee beans. I'm grateful for somebody making my coffee. I'm grateful for the water. You know what I mean? These are all separate things. It's not one thing. It's literally a wormhole of gratitude that's sitting behind, just like we could easily say with LinkedIn, like you're like saying, you think of an app, right? You think of the creators, right? You think of the engineers, you think of the people that put the money up, you think of all the traveling that had to be done, the people initially got on it, right? And shared it. Like there's just like it's just massive, you know. And I love how you could take one thing and you can make it like you can feel it. Because if I just say I'm grateful for my cup of coffee, there's little or no emotion, right? But as soon as I go, I'm grateful for my coffee, and then I go, these are things I'm grateful for that have to do with my coffee, that are like, you know, you start to go, whoa, wow, there's like so much going on, right? I mean, I was thinking the other day, it's like with me, I'm not a snob or anything, but I've got coffee beans that my wife, she's my wife now, that actually she brought Juan Valdez from Colombia, you know, whole beans from Colombia. And that's different from getting something that says Colombian in America. Not saying that it's not all good, but you know, she literally brought that. And I have like a really nice coffee maker that I got a good deal on, that blends the beans and brews it. And then I'm thinking like, I have cream in my refrigerator. I have a refrigerator, right? So, but I got whole cream there, you know, and coconut oil. Somebody made coconut oil, right? And then it's, you know, it's just like, if you think about that, right? You think about a general product. How many people are involved in, you know what I mean? Like we could go down the rabbit hole of refrigerators. You could go to the rabbit hole of cream, right? You could go to the rabbit hole of coconut oil, like all these manufacturers of coffee, right? Like, I mean, the coffee filters, right? It's just, okay. You guys,
even my sort of entry into the whole gratitude world, I went to a thing at General Assembly, which was kind of like a night school for startups. I think it was in New York. Someone brought it over to Hong Kong, and you know, they did one event a month. Then it became one a week, and then eventually every night of the week. And one of the guys who spoke, Mush Pandwani, and his theme was the essence of an entrepreneur. And I thought, oh, that was interesting just to go and have a listen to his story. He'd been made redundant sort of unexpectedly, but he was such a positive guy that he went, well, you know, I was going to quit in a few years anyway. I'd done a few blog posts and I was going to turn that into a book. So why don't I just do that now? And what I really liked about his approach was that he just gave a framework for reverse engineering his book. He said, look, just say you want to write a 100-page book, you just put a timeline on it. Say you want to get it done in 100 days. That means you need to do a page a day. And that framework, you know, made me realize, well, you know, even though I'm working full time, maybe there's an opportunity for me to do something similar. So the very first book that I published about 6 years ago is literally 100 pages, kind of in honor of Mush for planting that seed. And the other thing that Mush, I'm really grateful to him for, was he spoke about, you know, let's say you leave a big company and you don't have all the infrastructure around you. How do you maintain perspective and focus and everything else? And in his case, he said, look, if you've got fresh running water in your house, then you're already better off than whatever it is, 80% of the people on the planet. And just to maintain that perspective and gratitude. And so I think the next day I was on a flight to Melbourne, and I had a notepad and I was just sort of making lists and brainstorming and trying to connect the dots. And I was reading Seth Godin, you know, his daily blog he's been doing, I think, every day for 20 years. And he's always just saying, ship your work, get it out there. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to write a daily blog about, you know, banking or finance or whatever. That, you know, that wouldn't be too exciting. But I was just able to connect the dots between gratitude, doing something, you know, on a recurring basis. And I think I was reading Malcolm Gladwell at the time, and he, you know, that whole idea of 10,000 hours was in my brain. So bring all those things together, and it was 10,000 thank yous. And the benefit of that is, you know, number 1 out of 10,000, you know, I thank my wife, and then our children, and then Ivy, who's been, you know, looking after our kids and us for 15 years, and then my parents, and saying stuff that, you know, often you wouldn't get a chance to say until they're gone, and that's kind of too late. And all of that led to that first book, you know, post number 100 out of 10,000, you know, was the beginning of another project. And then later on, you know, all of these things keep on snowballing, these collaborations, and it turned into Productive Accidents, which I only managed to finish last year. But, you know, Chris, I like how, you know, all of your stories of gratitude have been compiled into essays. So maybe talk a little bit about the book you did last year, and then how that snowballed into another book very quickly afterwards, which Andrea has also contributed to, and maybe we'll go into her essay. That would be cool.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, and I want to thank you, Peter, so much for being a part of both books and for being a catalyst for gratitude. I'll get back to you in a second. All right, it's like I want to lay it on. But so anyways, fortunately this last year, because of everything that was going on, I had a lot of time to write. I met the right people, and we decided to release a book called Dear Gratitude, where I got to do what I love, which is just initiate people to think in gratitude. So the amazing thing about the book is there's over 50 essays, people writing in gratitude for the book. So the most magical thing about the book is the book does exactly what I want to do. So the cool thing, and that's funny. It's like we're sitting here, right? So yeah. So this book exists now. Peter's in this book. Oh, that's the author's copy. Anyways, but Dear Gratitude allowed me to tell my story in gratitude, just a little bit of it, not the marry me, get to know me, but just the snippets of the beginning of my gratitude story, and then it allowed people to share their own gratitude, because gratitude is a very personal thing. And the amazing thing about getting all spectrums of the color is that you're going to relate to somebody in the book. So maybe my story, you don't get, or, but maybe you get Peter's, or, maybe get Denise's, or maybe get Laura's, it's wonderful. So basically that happened, which is great. And from that, because like what Peter was saying, one thing obviously leads to another, because I'd done that and I had a team, it's time, it's a new year. The books finally got out, right? It was like December, the paperback finally was like released, and I could like let all that roll off me. I was very excited to have it, but at the same time, I was very like happy that it was all done, that I didn't have to think about it. So I was like, what are you going to do next? And I had a couple ideas rolling around in my head, and from LinkedIn, mind you. So cool thing is I keep meeting people. Like, I like to give Peter a lot of props. Like, I feel like Peter really opened me up to just being like, I want to meet people. I want to have conversations. So because Peter's like, I've read Peter's book, I've spent time with Peter, he's driven that into me. And it's so great that, I actually, the title of the book actually comes directly from Peter. So here we go. Here's Peter. Peter sends me a thing on LinkedIn last month, I think it was, or maybe it was the month before. He says, check out this guy's thing he has going on. I'm going to bed because I'm in front of you at the timeline, but you should check out this guy, Kevin Monroe. He has a gratitude beat up. And I go, okay. So 2 hours later, I get on this call with a group and they're talking about gratitude, and it's great. I meet this guy, Kevin Monroe. He's great. We end up talking later. Nice guy. He's got a gratitude community, and, he does a 10-day challenge, which is awesome. We will have him on the podcast at some point. But moving forward, because I friended Kevin Monroe because of Peter on LinkedIn, 2 or 3 weeks go by, and I'm already thinking about my book, and I'm thinking about things, and I see this letter from this lady named Emily, and it says, dear 2020, an open letter. And I read this letter, and it was just amazing. It was just, she talks about losing her father and about being there with her mother and having wine with her mom at 10 feet apart, or, walking. I love it. She's like, I was walking outside and I realized that like the trees were greener, but it wasn't that they were greener. It's just, I was just noticing them. Anyways, amazingly beautiful letter to Dear 2020. And it encapsulated an idea that I already had. Like last year I was thinking it'd be great to get people's gratitude in this time, but I didn't want to do that. But now the idea was like Dear 2020, which is the next book, which will be out either in March or April, is a book about perspective, because perspective is one of the massive keys to being grateful. Perspective is I don't know where the pinnacle of perspective. It's right up here. And it's not a COVID book. It's a Dear 2020 book. And at the end of the year, at the end of anything, when you have a bookend, you can decide one of two things. You can say it's all for nothing, or you can go, okay, I learned something. What do I want to take away from this? What means something? What moments do I want to move forward? And that's what the book's about. So the cool thing is we put a call out, and then I'm going to go back around to Peter here real quick. And then I know I'm looking at the time here. So Peter is so great because he sends out, he's like MVP all the freaking way, man. Like, I can't tell you, man. Love you so much. I woke up New Year's Day, right? And I had 3 letters sitting in my inbox, and they were specifically because Peter was 12 hours ahead of me, and he had already like prepped this, and he was already going on. So I've been meaning to tell Peter this, and then we're gonna move to Andrea here. But I had I woke up that morning and I ended up picking up my phone, which I normally don't when I'm laying in bed, and I saw these letters. Maybe it was because I was curious, right? Because what could happen? But I started reading these letters, and I think I got to the second one, and it was so dramatically beautiful that I was crying in bed. Like I was literally, not bawling, mind you, because I'm laying next to my wife, but I was crying in bed, but my body was moving. That's how much I was feeling in this moment, right? And it was so much that my wife woke up and said, "Are you okay?" Like I woke her up because of this letter, this beautiful letter that's going to be in the book. I'm not even going to try to paraphrase it, but it was just, it opens up with like, as I'm holding my mom's, I think, brittle hand and this song's playing, like, it's just, man, it's good. Anyways, it's going to be in the book. So I want to thank Peter because he's bringing a lot of people. He's initiating. I get to be a catalyst. He's a catalyst. Here we are, catalyst. He just initiated people to share gratitude. He put the call out, and then I'm going to take over where Peter now said all this to you. So now you can talk about you thinking of Andrea and sending it to Andrea. Why don't you speak to that, and then we'll hand it off to Andrea.
I'm going to backtrack a little bit. What I really like about this connection is, on WhatsApp, we've been sharing links and introductions over time, right? And often within 4 or 5 of them, we've iterated an idea, so quickly that it's turned into something. Like, I published my book. Next thing you know, hey, let's do a podcast together. So you're doing the tech, I'm bringing in the people, and it's a perfect collaboration because we're episode 7. We're not even trying, without even thinking we could do this in perpetuity. And so I'm really grateful that you've just jumped on this and said, yeah, let's do it. Then the fact that you're writing your book. So this is like a starter kit for podcasts, right? Because I probably wouldn't have started a podcast so soon. You've helped fast forward that or accelerate that. Same thing with people who've never thought about writing a book. Suddenly you've given them that opportunity to write an essay for a book. And that's, they're going to be published within 3 or 4 months, which is kind of unheard of. If you're trying to do your own book, that's too big a leap, but we're giving them that baby step, which will probably lead to them going off and realizing, hey, writing is a superpower. It sort of rewires your brain. And they'll end up going and writing more, or they'll go back and realize, like Andrea will, I think, that she's already done a lot of great writing and she could turn that into a collection of essays herself. And self-publishing, now that we know how to do it, and I've even cut out Amazon. I've just gone straight to my own website, and that's been a great learning curve as well. So I'm sure that we're going to collaborate on, Andrea and I have spoken about collaborating on articles for LinkedIn. Chris, I think you mentioned you had an idea to do one already. I think that's another great way to give people access to being creative and capturing their stories. I mean, one of the big, the big ideas that really forced me to think about writing was a book by Craig Wortman, who was a professor of entrepreneurship at the time. He did a global webinar at work, and he's written a book called What Is Your Story? And, 3 sentences in that book changed everything for me. I wouldn't have done the first book and definitely not the second book if it wasn't for him writing that. And, those sentences were, stories are your most valuable asset, more important than facts. And if you don't write them down, they didn't happen. So having that discipline and, having that motivation to do this, I think what you're doing, Chris, is helping to unlock a whole lot of people who didn't think they'd be able to be published in a book. So yeah, the more we can share this to more people, like you could easily do a Dear 2021, a Dear 2022, the whole series continues. So anyway, I'm going to pause and then jump across to Andrea because I shared the Dear 2020 project and she has written a contribution for that. And so the idea was to get Andrea to read that and see where that takes us.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for sending that to me and playing around with it. I think it's gonna make a difference for my son as he grows up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here it goes. Dear 2020. Thank you for showing me how resilient, determined, and inspiring my son Sean was. We started the year with big plans to travel to London. Sean has been working extremely hard through 2019 to qualify for the Pokemon World Championship. In February, we found out that he earned a spot in the competition, and we were looking forward to supporting him in his big goal to attend the live event in London. Even we, the parents, were excited about the opportunity. So there were no words to express what would have it meant for a 15-year-old boy. This event would have been the dream come true for him. Then COVID-19 hit and the event got canceled. I expected Sean to be upset, to be super sad, to not understand or agree with the cancellation. Yet, I think I was more upset than he was. I remember him putting his arm around me and telling me, "It's okay, Mom. I understand. The world needs a different focus now on fighting this pandemic." Wow, I thought, who taught him how to roll with the punches? Maybe I did. I had a few stories of my own that I shared with him from my past. So what happened next was really what I'm super grateful for to have discovered. As everything he loved to do got shut down, instead of falling into deep sadness, Sean got even more focused on his other goal, his long-term goal. He wants to be an engineer and build robots. He has been wanting to do this since elementary, where he first became part of the robotics club. He has even co-led that club at school with a volunteer parent, an engineer, for a year. Then the next year, he designed a new curriculum for the club and was ready to take the club and his leadership to the next level. Unfortunately, the parent could not volunteer anymore, and no other parent stepped up to support. So in order to build robots, he figured out that he needed to go to college. And in order to go to college, he needed to skip the pre-calculus class at his high school in 2020 so he could get into calculus class and then from there to other higher level math classes. Turned out one of his friends has just done this 2 years ago with the approval of his math teacher and the school's math board. So Sean got excited. He talked with his math teacher, wrote emails, checked with his school council, and lined it all up. Then he came to us and announced his goal and asked for our support. We were curious and asked, what would you have to actually do to be approved to skip the class? He casually responded, I have to read the pre-calculus e-textbook, do all the exercises in the book, and turn them in by September. I don't know how many of you have seen or held a textbook before, but every book Sean brought home from school could have been used for self-defense because of how heavy they were. Thus, I knew this textbook must have been no exception either. Sean had a plan though and accepted the opportunity. He started slow and then ramped up his studies in the last 2 months. He worked for hours, watched YouTube videos, chatted with friends, joined a math support group. I mean, he was determined to figure this pre-calculus out. We even left him at his grandparents' house in August, so his little sister couldn't bother him and that he could finish. And he did. He finished strong. His face was filled with pride, excitement, joy, and a sense of self-worth when he was told he was approved to skip the class. I recognized that face. My clients have that face when they trust themselves to the fullest and believe they can achieve anything they put their minds to do. Sean stayed focused, believed in himself, and achieved his goal. What will he achieve when he will be 25, 35 years old, I wonder? When me and my husband were struggling to see further than our backyard during the pandemic, Sean was showing us how to focus on one thing, on what is important to us despite COVID challenges. When me and my husband were feeling overwhelmed and not seeing possibilities, Sean told us to look for only one thing that was still possible right then in that moment. And when I felt like it was too much to carry the pain of our family and of the friends around us, he silently stood next to me and gave me a big hug. We often hear everything that you need has already been given to you. In 2020, I really understood what this meant for me. Thank you, 2020, for showing me that the people that I needed in my life to support me were already in my life. They just needed to be noticed and given a chance to help me. Thank you, 2020, for blessing me with such an amazing person who happens to be my beloved son. I'm grateful to be his mother.
Wow, amazing.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Andrea. So good. That's what I really love about that. I mean, I'm going back to. There's another person that I met, this Barbara Oakley. I don't know if you've ever come across her. She's a professor somewhere in Midwest or something, and she's written a book about learning how to learn. And she's got a series of videos. And she was someone that was not strong at math, but ended up becoming an engineer, I believe, actually. But it's about her journey and how she taught herself how to learn. And now she's written a book about that, and she's got a bunch of videos. I'll send them to you because I think it'll resonate. You know, the fact that your son has actually been able to effectively teach himself, right? He did this all. That's so powerful. That's priceless. So it doesn't matter where he goes from here. He knows he's got that skill, and anyway, that's incredible. So congratulations. It's awesome.
Thank you. Sorry, getting emotional here.
That's totally good.
I'm so glad you read that. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Because I've read it, obviously, and I enjoyed it, but getting to hear it in your voice and, it was absolutely beautiful. And this is with Peter, who initiated you. Like I asked, here we are in this group, and there's this beautiful letter, and you sharing these beautiful things. So thank you. Go ahead, Peter.
What's great about this, this little, I guess, movement or whatever, I guess, that's sort of starting to build, right? Momentum is, now we could invite Sean to write an essay in the next book, or there's so many possibilities. So my eldest daughter wrote an essay in the initial gratitude anthology, and that was amazing because it enabled her to reflect on, moving from Australia when she was 3 and living in Singapore for 9 years, and then Hong Kong for 10, and then going back to Australia for university. And it was only when, she studied anthropology and psychology and all these other things that she was able to make sense of her journey, right? And capture that in the essay, which was really, again, priceless. So, and all of the people that are featured in these books can easily become guests on the podcast here, and we continue this conversation and have that tradition of reading the essay. That's an easy one to continue going forward. It's the first time we've done this, Andrea. So thank you for being version 0.0 of this new experiment.
Thank you for.
Yeah, I just want to say too that your letter is so beautiful because it's right back to what I was saying about perspective, and you used your son's perspective to look at the situation, which is so beautiful. Your son gave you that perspective, and allowed you to see the year through his eyes, which allowed you to appreciate it a whole different way you could never do by yourself. It's just
Has Sean read this letter? Have you shown it to him or not yet?
Not yet. So
I think you should wait until the book gets published, and then you buy, you get a physical copy, and then you deliver it you wrap it, and just let him discover it. That would be pretty amazing, just to see his reaction.
Sounds good. I have a memory box for both my kids, and I was thinking to print it and put it in the memory box.
Yeah.
And not telling him so that he can find it later.
Yeah, to me, it's a time capsule you've just created, right? And something that can continue for each of your children and become a new tradition.
Yes. So thank you for that opportunity.
Incredible.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, that again, like I love sitting here with the two of you. Honestly, I really do, because again, this me mentioning it to Peter and then him mentioning to you, and then there's this beautiful. It's like being able to see like the caterpillar come, like the flat. It's just here we are, right? Like it's so great. And the fact you did that because he initiated you, and then you read that, and then here we are. Like it just, I'm just overcome with joy just being able to be. Now we've created this little circle here, right, where we got to do all that in one, almost like one family. So Wow.
Yeah, and the other thing that I like about this is I think we'd already spoken about, so our son is 15 as well. He's at boarding school in Sydney, and blown away by how he's adapted. And obviously COVID meant that we couldn't catch up. For a while there, we would every other month, either my wife would be down in Sydney or I would try to be down there, but he's had to navigate that. And anyway, 2 years of him growing, and it's tough being apart, but at the end of the day, it's made us more resilient for sure. Both of us, all of us. And we were talking about converging on Niseko, I think, at one stage too, Andrea. Getting both our sons over there to be help camp coordinators for this adventure program. Obviously that got cancelled because of COVID and everything else, but that's another possibility to bring the guys together one day.
You wouldn't believe it. I think yesterday Sean said, okay, Mom, so you told me that I can go to Japan. No, you told me that you're going to pay for my trip to Japan. And my husband's like, what did I miss? Because my son is learning Japanese, and I told him, if you really learn it, it's not just for the grades, but you're going to learn it. I have a friend that I went to UW with here in Seattle who is from Japan, and she's back there, and I already talked with her, and I said, so yeah, I'm ready to pay for a trip for you. Once you learn it, you're ready to speak it. And then I meet Peter, and then Peter, yeah, you're off first. So yeah, my son is ready to go. So now we just need, the world and COVID to create that opportunity. But I believe everything happens for a reason. So that will happen as well.
For sure.
It's awesome.
Cool.
I wanted to thank you guys, and I wanted to kind of timestamp this. I just wanted to share some gratitude real quick that's not related to the two of you, but I just have this. My dad had surgery today. He had a kidney stone where they had to surgically remove it by going in his back. And even though it's a normal surgery, I was just so grateful that, for technology in this time. It made me think about, obviously, what did people do with kidney stones like this 100 years ago? It was like, okay, either they lived in pain the rest of their lives or they died, and I'm just grateful. Like I said, I just want to timestamp. I'm so grateful to get my dad to the hospital, even with COVID. We drop him off, and then the doctor, the hospital called me. They go, he's going into surgery. He got done. Dr. Smith calls me and said he did a great job, and then an hour later, somebody called me from the hospital, say he's in recovery. He'll be in his room, and as soon as I get off here, I'm going to try to buzz his room. But I'm just sitting in such a state of gratitude for the medical profession, thinking about the engineers. You think about people creating things and people working in this modern day where obviously there's a lot of bad, but there's a lot of freaking good. When you think about, you think it just makes me, even if you have, how do you say this? It's like, for instance, you could be grateful for your headache because we have aspirin, right? Like you can thank it for aspirin because, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, you can be great for these things, but because in modern days, like we have so many things that can alleviate pain, like how freaking great is that? It's, here we are. Right. So anyway, I just want to state that I'm in a very grateful state. So I appreciate you guys. Let me share that.
Send your dad our best wishes. One day we'll catch up for a chat. It'll be good to get him on here, and have a conversation.
We should have him on and he can read his letter that's in Dear Gratitude. That'd
be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be an excuse.
I know Gail also spoke to your dad. Another connection from the Creatives Workshop, and we've been collaborating, and she's been on one of these episodes as well. So many great people, everywhere, right? That's what I love, just meeting people and hearing their stories and seeing what we can do, next with not just ourselves, but with our children and parents and, extended communities. So lots of possibilities.
We're going to have your daughter on too, so she can read a letter.
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
Right. We have all these excuses now, right? We created something and now it's like, now we just have excuses all day long to talk
once
about
a week.
We care about.
Once a week, Yeah, we've got to keep it going. All right. We should let you go, Chris, I guess, and do, catch up with your dad. But Andrea, I'll give you a buzz separately if you've got 5 minutes. Just have a quick catch up. Anything else you want to mention, Chris or Andrea?
I just want to say thank you again, Andrea. Thank you for taking the writing prompt and just writing something incredibly beautiful that I know is such a great perspective piece and so powerful, and allowing me to put it in my book and allowing us to share it here. So just thank you for being a grateful person and seeing that in this year and sharing it. It's absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity to write it, and then I know this will be something that my son can then take later. And as you think of your mother, I hope that's how he's gonna think about me. So maybe this will get us even closer.
Totally.
Oh, I'm sure it will. I know it will. You're speaking from your heart. It will. I mean, you're close now, but I'm saying, like, that is such a beautiful thing you wrote about him, and he's going to read it. Like you said, if you just let him read it, right? Like Peter said, find it. He's going to have an experience with it, and it will. It has to. I'm sorry. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
You just reminded me, actually. The school actually had this tradition of fathers writing letters to their sons, and so I wrote a letter to Tom last year as well, which I'd almost forgotten about. But yeah, I should put that into a book at some stage, because otherwise, it's there, but it'd be better to have it published somewhere. Thanks for the reminder.
That'd be a great book in gratitude too. Fathers writing to sons and vice versa.
Absolutely.
There's like so many openings there. It's like there's like endless opportunities. You just have to get the people involved. That's all it is, right? It's like,
I seriously think that's a great idea. Mothers to daughters, mothers to sons, everything. Yeah.
It could be one book where each section would be the different, maybe mothers and sons and mothers, and then fathers and Okay, we'll put that on the back burner, because you and I've got so many other books to work. Well, you want to close us out, man?
Yeah, no, great to have this conversation. It's Saturday morning here in Hong Kong. Thank you for joining on your Friday evening, particularly Chris. I think this is date potential time that we're taking away for you. Andrea, I think it's afternoon or a little bit earlier in the evening. But thank you so much, and I'm sure we will continue these conversations. And that's episode 7 of Gratitude Space Radio, collaboration with Productive Accidents. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And we are officially out.